All right, folks. Friday Night Live, and it got hot again, as you can tell by how red I am and my towel. We're in the 90s. I don't know what the hell happened. Kind of annoyed, to be frank. It was real nice there for a week or two, but fall will officially be here before too long, and not too long after that, uh, I'll be thinking about stowing firewood and that sort of thing. So we're on the downhill. We're on the downhill of roasting so much up here. So let's see. I got a couple of things to relay before I get to the main topic. Um, Number one, if you are hearing this before Sunday the 22nd, and you would like to come out to the farm here in West Knox County for a foraging walk, we're going to be doing that again from 11 to 2, because I had a bunch of people who I met last Saturday, I think, sometime last week. Time all runs together. When I was tabling at an event, and they wanted to do a foraging walk. And so far, several of those people have responded and signed up. But I do have some spots left. If y'all want to walk around the farm with me for 2 or 3 hours and see what we can find here in the middle of September, because it's been a weird summer, and there's still, it's really weird. For as dry as it is, a lot of the stuff to be foraged is really hanging around. Although the late summer stuff is available, and the things that we look for in the fall, that's coming around too. The persimmons, what's the other, the pawpaws, all those are out. We don't have pawpaws here. Exactly. I'm going to be planting some. Tell that story in a minute. But yeah, so that's going to be here on the farm on Sunday the 22nd. Just holler at me, and we'll get you on. And then Nicole Sauce and I are still pulling together the fine details of this, but we have agreed on a date, and that is going to be November 2nd. So November 2nd at the Holler Homestead in Lancaster, Tennessee. That's Middle Tennessee. I'm going to be leading a tree planting class, but this is going to be more cerebral. This is not just how to plant a tree. This is going to be why we chose a certain tree for a certain site to achieve a certain purpose. And we have several sites of this type where, the needs to be met are variables due to microclimate, due to all sorts of stuff. I finished the outline for it a few days ago, sent it over to her. And so we've got that on the calendar for November 2nd. So if you are interested and you want to get more information, cost and all that kind of stuff, you can holler at me, strongrootsresources@gmail.com, or you can reach out to Nicole, and that would be Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. And as we kind of, in this case, we kind of wanted to make sure there was enough interest and enough people willing to attend before, basically before I go buy trees, buy and or order trees. So, because it is a little bit of an investment for what we want to do on that. So, and if it's something that if we don't have a lot of takers in early November, we might just push it out later, because here we can plant trees in the wintertime, no problem. Absolutely can plant trees in the wintertime here. It's a great time. It's just that sourcing them gets a little bit more complicated. Not too bad. Just kind of depends. Kind of depends on whether I'm trying to find them locally, or whether we're ordering from states where the trees are already dormant and they're shipping bare root. So we've got that scheduled, and I'm looking forward to that. The Self-Reliance Festival is coming up. That is October 5th and 6th. And if you are interested in a GSD day at Delinquents Gully, Tollman Tim's Tennessee property, you can also reach out to me, or I can drop you guys into the there is a Telegram chat group dedicated to that. We're going to be doing a number of projects. So this is going to be preceding the festival. So this is going to be like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before the festival. A little more land clearing, more building. There's a water system going in, and then I'm going to be leading the initial plantings of the food forest / nursery up there. and I've been busy fetching trees for that. I've got about 8 trees now, some blueberry bushes, and we'll be making a couple more ventures out to round up a few more things to kind of get that process started. So that will actually be another opportunity to I'll be able to go over guild design and why we're placing things the way we're placing them, and working with kind of a microclimate within one where we've designated this nursery space, this food forest nursery space. We're going to be setting this up where this is going to be a somewhat more spacious guild system, because we are going to leave room for a little more room for access and harvest for the sake of propagation. So we may not make things as dense initially, because we can always fill in later. So yeah, so that's going to be happening a few days prior to Self-Reliance Festival on October 5th and the 6th. So you guys know how to get a hold of me if you want more details on that. Hippocrates Garden says sometimes heard on Jack's. Yes, thank you. I bumbled that for a second. Yeah, guys, I am on the expert council. Reached out to Jack several weeks ago, and he has added me as basically the plant guy, the foraging guy. So I have been providing him like a post a week, which if he's short on content from other members of the expert council, he can always plug mine in. Sometimes he sits on those posts for a week or two, but I think he ran the one yesterday, Thursday. So and Jim from our Telegram chat has sent in a really good question that I don't want to spoil entirely here in the show. So so he asked a question that is going to get me started on it, but I want to give it a really thorough answer. And Margot messaged me and gave me some useful tips, because she has lived in various areas, and that's basically Jim's question. Jim wants to be able to know what he can forage, at least one plant that he can find in multiple locations up and down the East Coast. And fortunately, there will be more than one plant, but I want to give this a really good answer. So I'll be working on that this week, so we can hopefully go on next Thursday's expert council on the Survival Podcast. So if you guys are listening and you have not heard the Survival Podcast before, that show is probably the reason most of us know each other. Most of us started listening to that, and all these subgroups kind of broke off. Nicole's thing, Tim's thing, the Lots Project. I'm going to forget most of them, but that's how most of us have gotten to know each other. Nicole started doing the workshop. That's where I first met Margot in person. So yeah, it's Jack's fault. It's all Jack's fault that so many of us are doing so many cool things. Also because we decided to follow Jack's really good advice. I think that's the bulk of what I've got coming up, at least that comes to mind at the moment. I have suddenly found myself incredibly busy after having a summer that was not sparse by any means, but a little bit slower in the offsite job department, which was okay because it let me put more focus on things here at home, and I've been able to work more steadily on a couple of projects with my neighbors, where it makes a lot of sense to really help build food systems with the people who live close to you. So I've been able to build and improve a food system for my neighbor Beth, and that is kind of a continuing job of mine. So that's been really nice to have been able to focus on that. But all of a sudden I'm a little bit busy again. I have added a new customer where we are again kind of slightly reworking and rehabbing a beautifully planted space. This was somebody who I just kind of want to respect for privacy and everything, but this was somebody who used to be back in the day, very active in the local permaculture scene, when it was kind of ran by different people. Like all these sort of things, all this stuff kind of ebbs and flows. And you have, people, they do it and then they move on to other things, or their life changes, or, things change. And so they're not as active in meetings and gatherings and that thing. And, things get quiet for a little bit. And then we've had this kind of revival over the last several years. So this was a lady who was in with all of that, and took the certifications and got all of, added to her skill sets and everything, and planted out her property. And it's a small but beautifully planted, incredibly productive property. And there's just a few things at this stage she's just kind of decided needed changed up a little bit. So I have begun the process of that. And that was my first full day out there was Thursday. And one of the really cool things about working with somebody like this is, one, like, she gets it. I don't have to, explain all this to her. She understands the principles. So, sometimes people are like, well, I don't understand why you're not using chemicals, or, why can't you just X, Y, Z? It's like, well, because we're following a certain set of principles here. We have a reason for why we're doing things the way we do, because we're taking the long view here. And the other nice part was that she has so much abundance at this point that she's just sharing stuff. Like, she had, while I was working, she just has neighbors who just swing by, and they were picking, they were picking persimmons and picking pawpaws and grabbing some grapes from the arbor. And she's just kind of apparently really well liked in the neighborhood. And it's like, man, it would be nice to see everybody in that neighborhood doing this. That would just be the coolest. So, which means she sent me home with some stuff. So I've got jujube fruit, which, if you've never tried those, they're very interesting. I've planted several, but I've never been around one that was, that was fruiting, that was big enough to fruit. And they're kind of like an apple, but a little bit drier, a little bit pithier, but they're still really good. So she sent me home with those and some pawpaws. And even better, she has lots of baby volunteer pawpaws that she didn't want in the yard. And she said, please dig them up and give them to a new home. So I'm going to plant at least 3 here, because she's got 2 different trees and they're both productive. One is more productive than the other. So I'm hoping that I have managed to get the 2 different varieties based off where I dug them up. Those will be getting planted as maybe even this evening, once I'm done with the show and the sun is not beating down on me. I think I'd like to get those planted into the food forest. And they're just a couple of feet tall now, but let's do it. Let's plant them. Plus, she sent me home with pawpaws, so I will be saving that seed. Pawpaw seeds need to be kept damp. You think about it, if they just drop on the ground, they're housed in that, that fruit. And so they, keep a certain level of moisture and everything. So if anybody in the chat would like some pawpaw seeds, just let me know, and, send me a couple of bucks for mailing them down, and I'll get some to you. So that's something I'd happy to be sharing, giving off, just going off the number of pawpaws that she gave me. I'm probably going to have, I don't know, 20 or 30 seeds, easy. Let me wet my whistle here for a second. Ask a question. Hey, Joseph. Joseph is asking, for the Sunday class, is there any kids discount? Joseph, I don't really even charge money for kids. If you guys are in the area and you'd like to come out, it's no big deal. I mean, like teenagers, kids that are old enough to like take notes and really listen and really absorb all the information. Sure, money's nice, but yeah, if you've got a little one that you'd like to bring along and they're reasonably well behaved, and I can trust you to, not cause any kind of paperwork headache, bring them on out. It'll be all good. And Margot, I will get that on my radar. I got to eat these pawpaws. I've got a bunch of them in the fridge. I'm probably going to break into them this evening. They're good if you guys have never had them. They are kind of like, I would say, like, the texture is similar to a banana, a little softer than a banana. and you just kind of the pod is kind of oblong. It's about that big, and you just kind of split it lengthwise and just get a spoon. And usually when you split it, the seeds will stay on one side, so you can just kind of pick out the seeds and set them aside. And then I just spooned it out, and they were really good. So yeah, yeah. So she's been wonderful. This new customer, you know, just very generous with her abundance and all that. So I'm happy with that, and I've got two more, basically part 2 and part 3 of this one specific project on her property planned, and there's more to be, kind of addressed, and where I provide the estimate and all that kind of good stuff. But I like to, since it's just me, I really like to kind of have a very clear goal with each part of the job. So that's and it's good, and it was good timing, because a lot of this is really like off-season work, or slow season, whatever, dormant season work. So that's a plus. So I've been so thirsty today. Probably haven't been drinking enough water. But a couple of weeks ago, Susan emailed me. Susan watches the show. Sometimes catches it live. Sometimes she says she catches the replay. And she's over in South Carolina, and she asked if I could talk about what shutting down the garden after the summer season looks like. So, and obviously, from a, permaculture regenerative outlook, because in my opinion, like, kind of everything I'm going to provide here is, what I kind of feel to be the bare minimum. I mean, we can really go crazy on this stuff, get very, very detailed and very, very particular, but with one side of the spectrum being nothing. Like, one day you just quit picking stuff, and you're like, I'm over it, I'm hot, I'm tired, I'm sick of the bugs, and you just walk away until spring. That is, in my opinion, the least desirable way of going about it. So from that point, I'm kind of going to build up to what is, in my mind, acceptable, to what is ideal, to what really, really gets you set up in the long term. So in this case, I'm mostly going to be addressing your annual vegetable garden. So for those who haven't heard before or haven't seen it in person, my vegetable garden is about, I don't really know, about 25 by 40. That sounds about right. It's about 25 by 40. It is on a hill. It is on contour, and it has both an upper swale and a bottom swale. And they're small. They are about 18 inches wide. They're about 6 inches deep, with, of course, the berm on the downhill side. The upper berm, this is where I do have perennials going on. The upper berm has strawberries and goji berry. At one point, it also had blueberries in there, but they weren't doing really well, and I transplanted them in the very early spring. And they've been very happy where I moved them to. I basically moved them into the food forest. So now it's just strawberry and the goji berry. And I am also going to, I'm going to dig out the goji berry, and I'm going to let this upper berm, I'm going to replant them, but not there. I'm going to let this upper berm be, just be strawberries. And just really, I want to plug in one other variety. I do have an everbearing, so I'm getting another crop right now, which is nice. I get a big spring crop, and then I get a second late summer crop. So I'm going to throw in more strawberry and just really let that take over. Let me take a quick pause, because Margot brought up something really important, and I forgot to mention it, so thank you. Michael Judd said pawpaw seeds need to cold stratify for 3 months. Just checked my notes. Okay, so in that case, Margot, you can put them in your freezer. So that's what a lot of people do. Since you guys aren't probably really going to get, cold stratification down there, you can just throw them in your freezer, and put a reminder in your calendar when they need to come back out. So, but yes, that is important. because you just kind of think about how they are in the wild, and that's what they do. The fruit drops. Maybe an animal eats it and poops it out later. Maybe not. Maybe it just rots on the ground. If the seed is viable, you know, makes a makes a pawpaw seedling. And pawpaws they will root sucker like crazy. And I'm pretty sure two of the ones I dug out were root suckers because they both had lateral roots that were no joke. I mean, 2 feet long. So yeah, so that is good to know. There is a little bit of details about pawpaws that are worth looking up. And Michael Judd is the guy. The guy dude knows his stuff about those trees. So good to relay. So back to the veggie garden. The upper berm I'm just going to let be strawberries because frankly I like them and they're pretty easy to pick right there and they seem to be happy. And the gojis are just coming out because they are also root suckering and they're kind of coming up all over the place. And I want things a little more compact like right there. So I might plug in some kind of perennial herb, or I might just sprinkle in like some basil seed. That's probably more likely what I'll do because even the perennial herbs here, everything gets so big, which is good. It's good for abundance, but I just don't want huge things at this uppermost part of the garden. So I might just, any soil that's kind of going, that is kind of uncovered. I don't see any reason why I couldn't do a little bit of basil or a little bit of parsley or something in that berm because we always want to plant our berm. So following that, below the berm, there is path number 1 and then a bed and then another path and a bed. And that repeats to the point of, I think I have 7 beds. And I kind of added one at the very bottom. The original bottom swale in the basin, I should say the bed above the basin of the swale. If you're looking downhill, I did not originally plant. We just mulched it and I ended up plugging a bunch of comfrey in there. And that was a really good idea because that soil was super compacted and the comfrey's done great. And it just gives me another source of, comfrey to cut for the rabbits and the sheep and all that. So, I have this alternating, bed, path, and the beds are a little bit wider than the paths, but not by a whole lot because I actually like a fairly wide path because I'm usually in there with a wheelbarrow. And I'm not the most coordinated of people. Just ask my jiu-jitsu partners. And my preferred method of gardening is kneeling on a little cushion and playing in the soil. I really don't like standing upright with tools for very long. My planting happens down on my hands and knees. So I want enough room to kind of maneuver around on a path and not be kicking my feet into the bed behind me. So my paths are a little roomier, but that's just how I wanted it. So with that garden setup in mind, they're in ground. I don't have any borders or anything. I don't have raised beds in this particular garden. But I have mounded the soil. So I think I talked about this, a couple of weeks ago when we did the whole, cardboard and wood chips conversation. So when this was first laid out, we did cardboard on the whole thing. And then the planting beds were blends of compost, a sifted topsoil, like kind of a general planting mix that we had picked up from the nursery. And then since then, I have just been adding my own compost to it, my own rabbit manure. Sometimes I put goat manure in there, but for the most part, it's the compost that I make either in the chicken system or just the static compost piles that I built here. That's what builds the soil. And then about once a year, I drop a little bit of fresh cardboard in the paths and throw some wood chips or straw on it. And that kind of keeps weeds from really being a problem because obviously there's still a lot of grass around here. So there are some areas where, grass seed falls in, germinates. But because I keep the soil built up pretty well, they don't really take hold. It's pretty easy to weed. So that's kind of the setup that we're working with here. So let's talk about what it looks like if you're going to put them to bed. So, and for a second, let's just say we're not going to plant anything for the fall. I'll touch on that in a little bit. So if you're not going to do any like brassicas or root crops or anything like that, like I said, least desirable is to just ignore it. Bare soil goes away, especially on a hill. Even with improved drainage and swales and things like that, you will lose soil if it's not covered up, especially with how wet our late winters and early springs can be here. So if you do nothing but this is better than nothing at all. Throw leaves on it. And I will throw leaves on it. I always get to that point, even though I do other things. I either throw leaves that I have gathered off-site when I go around. I do my leaf pickup for in surrounding neighborhoods. I go around and pick up folks' bag leaves because that's super easy. I will do that. We will also rake the leaves from the sycamore tree into the garden, and we also like heavily mulch this one. I guess it would be like the southern edge of the garden with leaves because of the way the water moves. So we mulch that really well as well. Because I kind of have like this sort of adjacent planting bed that I just kind of started building by piling up the leaves, and I just started throwing squash seeds in it because there's something with me where I can't just let a garden be its original size. It has to grow. If I have room, if there's not something like a driveway in the way, the garden will grow. So if nothing else, throw leaves on it. Because at the bare minimum, you are covering the soil, you are mulching, you are providing a little bit of nutrient, you are providing shelter for various beneficial bugs and things of that nature. So if nothing else, do that. Or even just mulch or some wood chips. It really doesn't matter. Just something. One of the things that Susan wanted to know, and I sort of skipped this part. So prior to mulching, like right now, my garden it's got a few tomato plants left, but we recently pulled a bunch out. We pulled a bunch that were basically done. They weren't really flowering anymore. Still had a bunch of green tomatoes on them. So we've got those out in the sun ripening. And Angel and I just sat at the picnic table and picked off what was ripe, picked off what was, starting to go bad or had spots or whatever, and sent those to the chickens. And we set the green ones out to ripen in the sun. So a lot of people have an opinion about leaving plant debris, removing plant debris. And my take on it is if the plant looked healthy and it wasn't showing any signs of disease or stress or whatever beyond maybe the plants being tired because it's been so dry and hot here, there's not necessarily anything wrong with just leaving them or cutting them off and leaving the roots intact, because that will feed a lot of the soil life. But I'm kind of the person where I want things a little bit cleaner looking. So I let stuff just die and lay on the ground, more so in the food forest. So when, some of that stuff in there kind of goes dormant, there's not a quote unquote cleanup. But I like to have things a little more orderly. It's kind of how my brain likes to wrap up that part of the season. Depending upon what plants we're talking about, you might want to make sure you're saving some seed. So if you've got root crops that you let set seed pods, radishes and beets and whatever, grab you some seeds. Same with your herbs, the parsley and the coriander seed from the cilantro, all that kind of stuff. Grab you some seed. Scoop you out some tomato seed onto a paper towel and let those seeds dry. Saving tomato seed is not nearly as complicated as some people make it. Who has tomatoes come up in their compost all the time? All the time, and most of them they do okay. So yeah, think about saving your seed. And if the rest of your property if it does not contain a lot of pollinator habitat, maybe leave stuff in the ground if it's still flowering, tomatoes, peppers, things like that, until you get your first killing frost. Around here I have a lot of pollinator support. We're on basically there's 10 acres in the immediate vicinity and several adjoining acres with the rest of the family members. And there's a ton of goldenrod and ironweed and milkweed and just all kinds of stuff everywhere. So I am personally okay with pulling stuff out of the garden if it's still kind of flowering, if it's otherwise kind of winding its way down, if I need the space, or if I just have the time to do it and it just needs to get done. I personally take all the plant matter out after I've saved seed and put them in the compost or throw them in with the chickens. That's what I did with the tomato stuff because they're just kind of working that into their little chicken compost system. And that works for me. That closes the loop for me. So once you've removed your plants and or chopped and dropped, if that works for the way you like to manage things, either way, there's not really a right or wrong. I just try to make sure there's not disease persisting in there. It's time to throw the compost on. So if you've got rabbit manure, goat manure, sheep manure, any finished compost, go ahead and get it on there. Go ahead and dress. If you have any perennials mixed in with that, go ahead and dress those perennials too. And I just kind of, I don't quote unquote till it in. I just kind of work it into the first couple of inches just with my hands. Or sometimes I take a little hand cultivator rake and I just kind of work it a little bit and just kind of blend that in. And then you can make the call. Like this time of year in Tennessee, we can still get away with planting. Like I'm going to make another run of lettuce, kale, probably some mustard greens. I don't think I'm going to worry with brassicas this year. I planted them last year because I got a hold of free plants. Most of your root crops, radish, beets, carrots, even though a lot of that may not grow a whole lot over the winter, they will overwinter and you will get an earlier spring harvest. Because I'm a fan of having some kind of rooting action going on in the garden when anything that requires, hot, long days to produce all that stuff is died back. Your cool weather crops can be a benefit there. Another option, and again, this is this is kind of a matter of how you want to manage things, and maybe you do one part of a garden one way and one part of another. Because I don't think I necessarily need to plant all the rows with this stuff, so I'm probably going to throw down a cover crop on some of these other rows. So again, we have options. So when you're choosing cover crop for garden beds in the fall, you need to choose something that is going to die off again once the hot weather returns. Some options for that. If you're wanting to kind of cover the soil and return nutrient, oats and buckwheat and annual rye are good options for that because these will generally not turn into a full-blown crop in the summertime. This is stuff that you either crimp it or you turn it into the soil once it's time to start planting other stuff. If you have really compacted soil, and I've got a couple of spots in this garden that I'm not real happy with, daikon radish is another option. So these will develop big, thick, gnarly, fibrous tubers that you don't want to eat, but you just plant them. And this is most likely what I'm going to end up doing in a couple of these beds. You plant them and you just leave them and you let them rot. They will go through their full life cycle. They will rot. They will feed all those soil organisms and they will help you aerate the soil. So that is most likely what I'm going to do. If you want to make this real easy on yourself, if it's your first time playing with cover crops, there are multiple very good cover crop diagrams if you just throw it into your search engine. And it'll break it down by cool weather and warm weather. So it just depends on when you're putting this stuff in. And if you're going to be, if you want to kind of on the gardening level, on just the regular garden level, not like broadacre where you want to get 50 pounds of seed at a time or whatever, Territorial Seed is actually one of the best. I really like their products. They have a beautiful, awesome catalog. They've been around a long time. Territorial Seed Company, territorialseed.com. And they've actually got a cover crop section, and they've got a spring blend and a fall blend. It doesn't get any easier than that. it's got a little guide in there that tells you exactly how to do it. Okay, you guys are asking why I don't like daikon radish. Well, Margot says she's not a fan, but fermented they're much better. I've never had them fermented. Maybe I just got one that was just too far gone because I peeled it and everything, and it was just weird. And I like radish and I like spicy, foods like that. I like hot stuff with a kick to it. But I don't know. Maybe I messed up. Maybe I need to give it another go. Maybe it was the soil was planted in. It was one. I think it came from. It was store bought. I don't think it was from the CSA. It certainly wasn't from my garden. So, it's a good question. I remember not liking it very much, but maybe I just need to go back and address that again. And let me grab a comment here from Hippocrates. Helen Athow has some good info on how far a lot of predators range and how close habitat needs to be to your vegetable. Okay, that's good to know. Are you kind of referencing sheltering bugs, like predator bugs, or beneficial and predator bugs? Feel free to expand upon that a little bit if you got a minute. So yeah, cover crops is one of those things that it can get a little bit complicated. But like I said, if you go to Territorial, they've got a nice little guide. They've got these 2 different mixes, tells you exactly what to do, how to plant them, how to work them into the soil when they've done their job, and that is complete. So, and then the other question that Susan had was whether we cover crop if we've established like a new bed using the method that I've described before, where we're laying down cardboard and thick layers of carbon like wood chips and leaves just directly onto the grass. And I personally do not, usually because it hasn't broken down enough. It depends on when this was done. If I have done this with wood chips that have gotten really well composted and they're broken down, then yes, that wouldn't be a bad idea. If I just got a load of wood chips, I built this bed over the summer, we're going into fall, I would just leave it. If anything, maybe pile more wood chips on if I have them available, because they're really they may not be broken down enough for those seeds to really germinate. Again, it could be. This is where you kind of need to get in there and dig and find out. But I'm usually just happy with that first year of just suppressing the grass growth with all the layers of carbon, and then usually by the second year, consider if a cover crop makes sense to use. Okay, they're talking about spiders and beetles and all that. That I've never heard of her, so that is I'm going to make a note in my notebook right now, because you guys know me, any excuse to buy a new book or read about somebody. So yeah, if you've established a new bed, that would be a good time if you have just established a new bed. If you have compost to blend in, by all means, go ahead and do that. That won't hurt at all. If you've made inoculants, go ahead and get it on there. Nothing wrong with that either. So another aspect to think about when we're kind of winding down the garden is if you've got perennials in there. So you're kind of working a little bit of a blend of a food forest or whatever, you're like me, where you've got perennials in your swales. Take note as to whether any of that needs to be divided. So in this case, and then although the fall may not be the right time to do it, but it is a good idea to go ahead and be thinking about it so you can jump on it in the spring when it's a better time to do that. In this case, I've got a small asparagus patch that it just looks too dense to me. Those might have gotten planted too close together. I'm trying to remember. I don't think I planted those. I think that was a work day, so they might have gotten a little too. They look cramped. So I've got a mental note that I'm going to Probably wait until spring to divide those. But interesting comparison I get to take here is one of the cool things about my new customer is that she had an asparagus patch that she just didn't want anymore. She said they didn't eat them, and I was more than welcome to dig them out and take them home. And boy, did that make my day, because I had enough to put into my garden, and I'm going to share some with some folks tomorrow and with one of my friends. So, but when I dug them out, they were like these big just mats, and all the little crowns or corms or whatever we call them were just so tightly clustered together. So I soaked them for a while. This was actually today. And then found a really good YouTube video on how to separate them, and separated them down into smaller, basically more like what you get when you order them online, and planted them in that lower burn, because I want more asparagus in my lower burn. So I'm going to basically see how they do. We will risk an hour and a half of labor to see how they do. Watered them in really good, mulched them. I'm going to throw some compost on them maybe tonight. Might be gardening with the headlamp on again. We'll see. But yeah, see how they do. So that'll actually be a good opportunity for me to say, hey, we can divide asparagus in the late summer, or it didn't work too good. But I mean, I'm kind of treating it like this is still a good time to get a lot of perennials in the ground. It's just that it kind of depends on what their previous growing experience was like. Like, I did just pop these asparagus out of a really, well-established plot. So hopefully they won't get too stressed. I'm going to do my very best to keep them watered, keep them dressed really well. And we should have enough time. I mean, we're only middle September. We will probably not even have, well, who the heck knows? We should not have our first frost until late October. So I think I'll have enough time for them to get a little bit of an opportunity to get a little more established. All right, cool. So Margot says, I recently acquired Helen Athal's book, The Ecological Farm. Haven't read it yet, but I watched her talk recently. All right, cool. And Hippocrates says, her book, The Ecological Farm, a minimalist, no-till, no-spray, selective weeding, grow your own fertilizer system for organic agriculture, and garden master lectures with Paul Wheaton and Alan Booker. Awesome. How did I miss this lady's name? It's, the longer I stay in this space, the more I find. Alan Booker, listen to his live stream with Nicole and Sean Mills earlier this week. I actually got to talk to Alan at length at the spring Self-Reliant. So this past April, Alan works on big projects, big projects, bigger projects than I ever want to have anything to do with. But dude is just stacked up with knowledge. So awesome. Well, thank you guys. I will absolutely be getting my hands on that. Yeah, Alan is a cool dude. He is a very calm and humble and wise fella. And I actually ended up talking to him about, because he's moving around the world a lot. He operates in a lot of different spaces with a lot of different people, and has probably a much wider firsthand view than I have. I'm pretty hyper localized. That's how I like to operate. Alan's got the real big picture in mind. And so I was asking him, with the rate of development that is going on, in his opinion, were there more developers actually taking interest in doing things in a more sustainable manner? And his note was, he said about 10%. Better than nothing. Because it's one of my biggest, let's be on the pet peeve. And just about everybody who lives here, will agree. The current mode of so-called development, so we're talking about McMansions stacked up on what was previously farmland, incredibly high density, shunting God knows how much water, and topsoil and dirt creeks. I hate it. I hate it. I hate everything about it. But at the same time, it's not a war I want to fight. One of the points I make to people when we have guests up here and we hold classes, it's people always tell me, they're like, do everything you can to hang on to this property, because we get phone calls and texts, me and Dad and Tyler, every day. Phone calls and texts every day, not an exaggeration, of big firms wanting to buy this and develop it, wanting to buy this property. And the answer is and always will be no. There is not a price. There is not a price, period. So yeah, I mean, Hippocrates says 10% is significant if it's the right developers. It is. I mean, I'm trying to be optimistic about it, but you know, we are far from the only community that is just watching shit go sideways, to be frank. With here in Tennessee, and I don't really want to get into like a whole, thing about government and everything, because screw all that. But there is no developers here. There, as far as I can tell, they have no liability on them to make any changes to the rest of the infrastructure, roads, so forth. In a lot of places, I think they're required to pay into like some kind of escrow before they can get approved to build the development. That doesn't seem to exist here. There's also, as usual, plenty of greasing of the palms and things like that. And nothing I've seen here in my immediate area, within half an hour of my home, is any kind of sustainable anything. It's just, scrape off the topsoil, grade it, slap up 200 houses in record time. They all look exactly the same. They're all ugly. They're so close together, you literally could spit out your window and hit your neighbor's house. I mean, it's just, I'm not coming down the fact that people need a place to live. I get that people need a place to live. I get that people are moving here. I understand why they're moving here. But I have my concerns about how this is going to play out. Traffic is awful. There's just certain times of day I don't even try to get out. I don't even try, if I can help it at all. Every time school's in session, it's just a mess. Our little neighborhood groups are reporting more and more just bad wrecks where there's just so much more density of traffic on tiny little 2-lane roads, and where they have 4-lane roads, people lose their property by eminent domain. We used to have more property at the bottom of this hill. It used to be a little 2-lane road. Now it's a 4-way highway because of growth, because of development, because of progress. You guys can see how I feel about this. I didn't want to get mad, but now I am. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't even want to try to get into that space of trying to influence it. So I deeply appreciate and applaud people like Alan who are in those spaces to try to mitigate some of this damage. I am trying to lead by example, and one of the examples will eventually be this demonstration site and permaculture-based nursery and the kind of the accompanying aspects of that being down at the roadside where people can see it. Because right now all they see and all I want them to see is a driveway going up through the woods. Unless you've been a guest up here, nobody really knows what goes on up here. And that's kind of the way I like it to some extent. But eventually, as part of my quote-unquote retirement plan, we will have a forward-facing, hey, there's more than one way to live your life, and you can have, your own foodscapes in your yard, and you don't have to have a bunch of freaking arborvitae and boxwoods and one crepe myrtle for color. So, if I was ever presented with a neighborhood scale project, I'm not saying I wouldn't take it, but it would be really something. It would be really something. That's where I'd probably, I would probably bid it. Or before I would bid it, I would call Alan and I'd say, what do I need to hire you as my consultant? And then bid it. because that kind of stuff is really overwhelming to me, and I don't like a whole lot of moving parts and a whole lot of uh, uh, fingers in the pie and people to deal with. But wherever I was with that, thank you guys for the book suggestion. I will be looking that up. Because that is, I mean, that's right up my alleyway. Um, this is really, um, all I'm interested in. Everything that surrounds this. I have other little hobbies and things that I like to do, but 99% of it is all this stuff, and I just kind of love being immersed in it and getting better at it and teaching others. So back to the garden. If you want to plant fall stuff, and I've got a little bit in, so I have thrown in some kale, some beets, and some carrot, and a couple of different lettuces, like a mesclun mix, and then some arugula, which around here really likes the cool weather better. I know people say it likes, hot weather, but not mine. It makes like a leaf and then it bolts. So arugula, the mustard greens do really well here, and they actually overwinter just fine. And then I get a bunch of seed off of them in the spring, and they're really spicy, and I like spicy greens. Like if I feel even just like a little bit stopped up, go eat a mustard green, good to go. And some collards, and that's pretty much what I've got. And then we've got time to do more peas. We've got time to do cat grass, which I started for the cats today, and it's coming up. Yeah, I'm gonna do some peas. I'm gonna throw in some more beets. We're actually warm enough. If you want to get you another round of nasturtiums in, you can probably get them done in zone 7 or better. And then I've got this black seeded Simpson lettuce. This stuff is amazing. Hello glare, but that's black seeded Simpson. This is one. It's really good in cool weather, but this actually stayed very tasty and not bitter at all, even once we got hot. So I'm gonna make another run of that, and I've got some. So if you've got the option to do row covers as well, so we'll season extending options. I'm not really going to get into the thick of cold frames and that sort of thing, but I did cold frames a lot back at the urban place, mostly because it was so easy to come by the materials. That is one thing I would say. If I miss anything from the city, and it ain't much, I miss anything from the city. One, it was being able to ride my bike everywhere and not feel like I was going to get killed. Can't do that out here. And it was being able to roam up and down the alleyways and pick up all kinds of useful materials. And I was always, because that whole neighborhood was constantly getting, houses updated and stuff. So there were always windows being set out on the curb. And so I had several different kinds of cold frames that worked really well. But I do have some of these, you guys know, like those pop-out dog kennels. That's basically what these look like, but they're a plastic with like a reinforced grid, and they've got little tabs where you can run like a tent stake through and hold them down to the ground. I've got 4 of those, and I used those last year and overwintered a bunch of lettuce, and they even made it through that crazy, sub-zero 8 inches of snow. They did great. And they're vented too, so they're fully covered, but they've got like strips of like mesh vent at the top. I can't remember what name or what brand they are, but a customer gave them to me because she wasn't going to use them anymore. So I guess that's been my trade-off. So since I've been running the business and I've been out here on this end of town, I have customers who give me things, which is wonderful and very kind, because my dumpster diving and my alleyway scrounging has dropped. And yes, Hippocrates, it's okay. I squirreled. If it's not a complete week if I haven't bitched about development at some point. What's crazy is that people will buy a lot in a subdivision with a view of a farm, and 2 years later, that farm becomes a subdivision, and then they get grumpy about not having the view of the farm anymore. And it's like, hello, cognitive dissonance much? So But you guys know what I think. I mean, this is just a very, very roundabout, off the cuff thought here. So forgive me for maybe not having this fully fleshed out. But I don't know how much longer. This really isn't like a doomer thing. I don't know how much longer like this version of suburbia is really going to persist. Because a lot of people don't really seem to be into it anymore. And even the people who are, living in this kind of like HOA controlled thing, they don't seem very happy or content. And the homesteading tsunami thing is real, even if it's just people, leaving a small lot to a somewhat larger lot, but maybe in a neighborhood without restrictions. Even things like that, I'm seeing. So, that's just kind of I think we're just kind of, I think it's just kind of at the end of running its course for a lot of people. But I guess we'll see how it plays out. We'll see. It'll be interesting. There's just a lot of conversation going around about what kind of new trends are emerging. And I think a lot of people are kind of just petering out on consumer culture and constant engagement with scrolling on your phone. And like so many people seem to be looking for real connection with each other and with the land. And that's what I'm here for. And I'm only sitting here in front of a computer screen because I want to find and get the word out to other people who share that outlook. So let me grab another comment here. I don't want to butcher this, but Kitsawa seed has a lot of great Asian greens, some that make it through the winter well, though they have been bought out by True Leaf. Yeah, True Leaf seems to be the big mamma jamma for that right now, but I will write that down. Seed. There are a lot of Asian plants that do really well here. I mean, that's why we have so many invasives, bush honeysuckle, things like that, privet. But for things that are, annuals, things that grow in your garden, why not? I mean, the grocery store is so boring, guys, isn't it? Like if you just go to, even a decent one like, Whole Foods or Earth Fare or Trader Joe's or whatever, it's all the same stuff. There's very little that's like interesting. Unless if you've got an Asian market in your town, and we do have a pretty big one. I like to go in there just to look around, just to look at what's freaking different, just sometimes things just feel so bland and unengaging. So thank you for that suggestion. I'll look into that as well. So I'm going to pause for another sip of my drink here for just a second. You guys let me know if you got any other questions. Otherwise, it's 7:30. I'm probably going to wrap it up here in a minute. I am leaning towards putting my shoes back on and getting these pawpaw trees in the ground. So foraging class on Sunday, tree planting class on November 3rd. Our next gathering here at the farm is going to be in December. I guess that'll be the first Sunday. I think so. I think it'll be the first Sunday in December. I think that's the plan for that. Give me a holler on all the usual, the Facebook and all that stuff. Everything's under Strong Rich Resources. Email me, strongrichrresources@gmail.com. Susan, if you're watching this now or if you watch it later, I hope I answered all your questions. I tried really hard. She had a lot of really good questions. And I tried to make it fairly, I tried to go in a little bit of order. So you guys get a little bit of a hint of what it's like to be inside my head. And international markets. Yeah, Hippocrates is right. Most towns, most mid-sized cities and up have them. And of course, these days too, the Hispanic markets are very commonplace as well. So those are another nice one to browse if you just want to get out of your boring little Americanized food box. So I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for the contributions as always. And we will talk to you guys next time.